Hello fellow photographer, how is it going? This is a Fujifilm buying guide. If you're in the market for Fujifilm cameras, you should probably watch this video. And what seems to be the thing over at Fuji is that they make their flagship camera and have the same insides of all the camera bodies in that range. So for example, the Fujifilm X-H2S, like I'm filming on here, would have the same insides or the sensor as the Fujifilm X-T5. So you'll get those nice Fuji colors all across the line there. The real difference, apart from design and price, are obviously the features and the shooting experiences across the X series cameras from Fujifilm. So let's start with the top tier X series cameras, the Fujifilm X-H2 and the Fujifilm X-H2S. One of these cameras is for photographers with 40 megapixels, that's the X-H2. The other is made more for videographers, the X-H2S. Both of them film great, both of them take great images. The only real difference is the features for video on the X-H2S and the features for photographers in the X-H2 and higher megapixels. That's about it. I love using the X-H2S for photography as well, and personally I don't see the need for more than 26 megapixels, so it gets the job done. The camera bodies are exactly the same and they have the exact same customizability, with the customizable buttons are on the dials there that you can customize to your own needs. And I've got my Fuji X-H2S set up for different things on this customizable dial. For example, when I was in Africa, I was shooting wildlife photography with C6. It was optimized for that. Now it's a different story since I mostly do street photography. But these cameras are meant for the working professional. They have the professional look and feel to them. They handle very well, and they basically look like any other professional level camera out there from Canon, Sony or whatever. These top tier cameras, they look almost the same. That means you only get 50% of the Fujifilm charm to these cameras, which is something Fujifilm is really famous for. The X-T5, for example, we'll talk about this in a bit, has much more charm and almost, I would say, 80% of the features. The good thing about these X-H2 camera bodies, what I like, is that they have the flip out screen. I find that to be very useful for both video and photography. If you're a beginner, I'll definitely stay away from these cameras because you'll get the same job done with the much less expensive other cameras from the Fuji system that we'll talk about in a bit. In addition, to unlock all the features for these cameras, you have to buy a much more expensive CF Express card, and that really adds to the total cost. They cost around $2,000 for the X-H2, that's the photography version of this camera, and $2,500, if I'm not mistaken, for the X-H2S. That's more for videographers. Practicality score for these cameras, I would say, is a 9 out of 10 because they are so customizable, as you would expect from any other prosumer type level camera. They handle very well, they feel very balanced with almost any lens, so there is that. You would expect nothing less, I guess. When it comes to charm score, I would say it's a 4 out of 10 because they just look like any other pro level camera out there. Now let's move down to the next tier, and that is where practicality meets charm, and I'm talking about the Fujifilm X-T5 and also X-T4. I love the X-T4, the X-T5 is newer, so it has newer technology and all that stuff, but the X-T4 is also a great camera with the exact same charm, and you have the flip out screen as well. If I could choose, I would have the flip out screen for the X-T5 because I just like that more, but that's a subjective matter, I guess. You don't get as much practicalities from these cameras, but they make up for all that when it comes to charm. They are very charming cameras, and that's also why Fujifilm cameras are so popular these days, I think. And these cameras, they have all the pro features like weather resistant, they have a slightly bigger grip for a better shooting experience, and the lenses on these cameras, they balance quite well as well. I do have an extended grip because I have, like, I wouldn't say big hands, but they're I don't know. They're big enough so it's annoying to shoot without this grip, but that's a topic for another video. The X-T5 has 40 megapixels, so that's great if you're out shooting street a lot and you want the ability to crop in without sacrificing any quality. Its predecessor, the X-T4, was more of a hybrid shooter with that flip out screen, so in my opinion that was more versatile, and you can get a much better deal on the X-T4 on the secondhand market if you want to go that route to get a new camera. Both great options. But if you see this camera on your shelf or on your table, it really invites you to pick up and use, and I call that the Fuji effect. With a retro look, this almost always comes with me even when I go to the supermarket, because you never know what comes along in terms of interesting subjects out there. It's my everyday camera, and yeah, I use it almost daily. If you're picking up a camera for the very first time and money is no issue, the X-T5 would be my choice 100%, because you can use it for basically everything, and it can handle bad weather. So that's a good point as well, especially if you do street photography and you want to go out in, let's say, a blizzard or when it's raining, to capture awesome expressions and emotions and the vibes of the street. The X-T5 is your friend 100%, and you'll find the links to all the cameras down in the description if you want to check them out. But there is a big but for the X-T5, and that is it is expensive at $1,700 US. So if you're on a budget, I would probably go for one of the less expensive ones. But in terms of practicality, I'll give it a score of 7 out of 10, because yeah, it has most of the features from the X-H2 cameras, and in charm score, it has to get a 9 out of 10, because it looks retro, it feels retro, it invites you to pick up and go use every day. Great choice. And just quickly before we continue this video, please do like it and subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. That would be awesome, and it really helps me make more and better content for you. Now, let's call this the mid-tier cameras, and that would be the Fujifilm X-T50 or X-T30. I haven't used the X-T50, but I'm sure it's great. I've used the X-T30. I used that in this video. You can see that where I went to Tokyo, in Ginza, Tokyo. I spent a night there doing night street photography with the 56mm f1.2, I think it was, and just had a blast. It's also a great camera. Doesn't have all the pro features like weather resistance and stuff like that. Doesn't handle as well either, so I would definitely get that one with a grip. It feels very small when you go out and shoot with it. Also in this range and size is the X-T30 Mark II. Don't know much about that one either. Like I said, I've used the X-T30. Think it's good, especially if you have small-ish hands. If not, get it with a grip. Now these cameras gives you about 80%, I would say, of the Fuji experience, apart from these features of the X-H2Ss that you probably don't need anyway. You can film with them, you can take awesome photos with them, and they are just powerhouses of a creative tool, 100%. Remember that this is more like a practical overview, meant to give you a better decision base for your very first camera. If you want to have more details about the specific cameras, I'm sure you'll find a ton of videos about those specific ones on the interweb. Practicality score for these cameras, I have to give them a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10 if I had smaller hands, because I think they're a little bit too small, at least for me, but you can get grips for this. So okay, let's call it a 6 out of 10, but in charm score, an 8 out of 10. 100%. And all these cameras are great beginner cameras, and you can get the X-T30 at a much more reasonable price on the second-hand market. And you can also get the X-T50, I think, with a kit lens, the 16-50 f2.8 to 4.8. And that's a lens I'm really interested in. So I haven't tried that one, but apparently it's really good and it's super small. So you get the versatility of a zoom lens in a very small and compact package. That is perfect for, let's say, travelers. And I'd say you get 70% of the Fuji experience at less than half price of the top tier, the X-H2 and X-H2S. I would probably recommend the X-T50 if you're a complete beginner and you want a brand new kit. If you're on a budget, get the X-T30 secondhand. Now this is what I call the weird tier in the X series from Fujifilm. Let's start with the X Pro series. I haven't quite understood why they made those cameras. I guess because of photographers or street photographers, I just can't wrap my head around it. It just seems a weird camera. Now, I haven't used it, so I wouldn't know exactly how to use it, how it feels, but I've touched it, I've had it in my hands, and it felt immediately a bit awkward. Yeah, just a weird camera. I didn't quite like it. Then we have the X106 cameras. I know that's the public's favorite these days. It's a fixed lens. That really limits the possibilities you can do with this camera. And I would rather go for an interchangeable lens camera than getting a Fujifilm X106. So I call this a weird tier because they are quite pricey and you have so much less things you can do with them, especially since you can't change lenses on the X100 series. And the X Pro series just feels a bit weird. I think they even discontinued the series. Don't quote me on that, because you just have so many other good options out there. And besides, the X106 is about the same price as this X-T5 with kit lens, so go figure. I'm probably not the person to give these cameras a practicality score. Well, the X100 series I can. The practicality score for that would be maybe a 6 or 7, but the X Pro series I would probably say 5, if not even 4. Because it just feels weird. You have to get used to that one for sure. In charm score, I would say X Pro is a 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10 on the X100. It just looks so cool. I really like the design of it, but I just don't like the fact that it's so expensive and you can't really do as much with that camera as you can with an X-T5, X-T4, X-T50, X-T30, etc., where you can change lenses. And that's a big deal if you want to grow as a photographer or a videographer. You just have so many more options with those cameras. Alrighty then, if you have any specific questions about these different cameras, you can just leave them below and I'll get back to you. Obviously, I haven't used all of these cameras, but I've used Fujifilm for many years now, so I have a pretty good idea on what you can expect for all of them. Despite me owning the X-H2S and the X-T5, the top tier, I wouldn't recommend those for beginners. But if you're looking to expand and evolve your photography, and if you're out in, let's say, bad weather or something like that, the X-T5 would be a good choice in my opinion. So I hope this gave you some ideas on what you should look for when you look for a new camera and what price range. You don't need the very best, the latest and greatest. All cameras take excellent photos. They film or have enough film features for you to do anything you want. Getting anything in addition to that would just be a waste of money that you could have spent on going somewhere cool to photograph, to create awesome memories or anything like that. And to me, that's worth a lot more. Alright, that's it for this video. Hope to see you in the next one. And as always, as I've said, subscribe to the channel, like this video, that would be awesome, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.